everyone, I'm Jackie, this is Clem. I'm here at the UNH barn. Today I'm going to talk about dressage knots. First I'll show you some materials that I use in the weeks before the event, and then I'll talk about materials that I use while I'm actually braiding and the day of. And then I'll go through the step-by-step technique that I do when I braid.
Clem has a pretty healthy, happy mane, so to prepare for a show coming up, I mostly just put a little bit of Cowboy Magic, which is a white bottle in this picture, and just rub that into the root of her mane really well. It helps a lot with dandruff and just keeping a mane healthy in general. I included this purple bottle as an example of a leave-in conditioner, but there are many different kinds made for both humans and horses you can use, and it also maintains cleanliness and shine in the mane. As far as shine goes, Shoshin is another product you could use which isn't pictured but will make it really shiny. Neocochrum, also called Bath in a Bottle, is a product that works great for the mane, coat, and tail, especially if your horse has white on it. It's great for getting those dirt or pee stains out, but this can be used to keep the mane clean or dirt-free while preparing for a show. I wouldn't recommend using any of these products in the mane on the day of, just because anything that's meant to clean or add shine can make the hair more slippery, which will make it harder to braid. I've included here both products that I use while braiding, as well as some other options. I highly recommend using a water bucket with some nice hot water in it and a cloth or sponge to wet the mane before you braid. The quick braid I use, kind of along with the water, to really get the mane wet and sticky. It helps with being able to grip the hair while you're braiding. Quick braid isn't really necessary for practicing, but for show day is a great tool to have. I use a brush that isn't super dense so it won't rip hairs out in order to detangle while braiding. I have two examples of combs here. The thinner silver one is a pulling comb, and it's what I prefer to section with while braiding because I find the length of it works as a good ruler for how wide my sections are, and it holds the hair back really well. However, the other comb is a fine option as well. A lot of people braid with yarn or thread and use a hook like I have pictured. That isn't how I'll be showing it, but it's always an option. I'll be showing how to use the elastics or the rubber bands you can see kind of in the middle in this picture. The hairspray in this picture is hard to see, but it's just a human brand hairspray. Pretty much any brand works and will help keep the flyaways down.
So I have a wash bucket on the floor here, and I'm going to use that to wet her mane really thoroughly. And I always make sure to wear something with really deep pockets so I can just shove all of my materials in my pockets and they'll be right there. Another option is to use a grooming apron, but I don't have one of those, so deep pockets work too.
So here I'm going to wet the mane with a pretty damp cloth. I'm going to do this just by running it right through the mane, and I'm going to wet a bigger section than I think I need, just to make sure that I cover all my bases. And I try not to get the horse's neck too wet so that it doesn't bother them, but get them thoroughly soaked. Now I'm using a pulling comb to section off my first braiding section, and I'm doing this by running it through the mane, but I'm not necessarily trying to detangle the mane. It should be detangled already. Then I just use the top of the comb to cut the part of my section so that it's a nice clean straight line. And then I just use the comb to keep the rest of the hair to the side so that I have access to the section that I'm trying to braid without getting unwanted hairline. So at this point, I'm ready to start braiding. I'm just going to make sure that the mane is nice and smooth, and then I'm going to add a little bit of quick braid right to the base. Looks like I add a lot here, but really the bottle wasn't quite working. But basically you just need a few squirts so that it's nice and smooth and it can get all the flyaways nice and pressed down so it looks really clean. Then I'm able to section it off. So I mostly do this by eyeing it. You just want 3 equal parts, so however you can do that so that it works for you is fine, as long as you get 3 equal parts. Then I like to hold 2 strands in my left hand and 1 strand in my right hand, and I take that middle strand with my right hand with the 3 fingers underneath, pull it over and push the right strand over top between my thumb and my index finger, and then I do the same on the left so that I create a cross. Once I have that nice X, I place my thumb over it and I take the right strand in between my thumb and pointer finger and and the middle strand in between my bottom 3 fingers. And by doing this, I'm able to rotate my wrist in a way that allows the right strand to cross over the middle strand and also push into where I have my thumb. So you can see I just placed my thumb over that right strand that's now becoming the middle strand. Once you've done that, you basically have a free hand. So you can see I'm adjusting this comb that's holding away the rest of the hair. And after that, you're able to keep braiding using the same technique. So you're going to do that rotating motion with your left hand now. I know this can be kind of confusing, but generally the first few crosses are the most difficult, and then you can just keep going, braiding down the braid, and it's a lot easier. So basically, you just need to remember to always keep your thumbs pointed towards the horse, and that there should always be a thumb on that middle cross to keep those crosses nice and tight and in place where they should be. And you can see that I'm mostly just picking up the strand that I want to go over the middle, and then pulling the middle off to the side and out of the way while I'm putting that strand on the right into the middle, or the strand on the left into the middle. And essentially you're doing the same motion with both hands, just one after the other, in order to keep creating this braid. And you're going to want to go down as far as you can, but you kind of have to make a decision as to whether you want to keep going down and risk having a looser braid or maybe some flyaways come out, or you want to stop and put an elastic in. You kind of have to find that perfect ratio of it's not too far up, but it's also not too far down that your braid looks messy. So I generally stop in around the same place on climb. I've pretty much figured out how far down I can go, but depending on your technique and ability, you may be able to go further or not quite as far. I'm then just putting an elastic in, and depending on the age of your elastics, this may take a few more crosses over. It's the same as like when you put a hair tie in your hair and you have to cross it over and double it up a couple times, but because the hair is so thin and you're working with such a small section, you have to do this quite a few times. You can see here I'm just doing it over and over. And then once I get to the last time where I think it's tight enough and I don't need to cross it over again, I kind of flip up that hair to make a little smooth end. You can see here that it's not all frayed and like the actual end of the hairs, but I flipped it up behind back just to give it a cleaner look. And then I pull out the top a little so that when I knot it, the braids will stick up a little more and not lay quite so flat. So now I'm just going to show you this process again. After my first braid, when I section off the hair, I'm trying to keep the butt of the pulling comb as close to that first braid as possible so that I can get even uniform sections and I'm not making bigger sections by leaving that extra space. Again, I'm just creating that nice crisp line as a part, smoothing out the hair really nicely, making sure I have no flyaways, and creating my 3 equal sections so that I can start braiding. Here you can see I put the middle strand under the left strand, and I know last time I put it under the right strand to start with, but it really doesn't matter as long as you do the middle strand under a side strand to begin with. And then you're going to keep doing that. You're going to keep putting side strands over the middle strand. So the right strand over the middle strand, left strand over the middle strand, and continuing on and on. Again, the first couple of crosses are generally the hardest for me, and then once I get going, I can go faster. Also, you might see me let go once in a while, like right there, I basically let go of that strand, and I'm doing that so that I can pull the strand down and make sure all those hairs are together and really smooth and not fraying or getting wider in my hand. It allows for more control and a cleaner braid. But I'm just continuing that technique that I talked about earlier, where I grab that middle strand with my lower fingers, take the side strand in between my thumb and finger, rotate my hand so that that top one, that side strand is over the middle strand, and just grabbing that on with my other hand's thumb and holding that cross right there. Now I'm at the bottom of my braid, and I generally try to go to the same length on every braid. So some people like to count the number of crosses that they have, like maybe you do 8 crosses in each braid or something like that. I think that's a little difficult, so I just kind of eye it, but make sure that they're all relatively level, and it's something that you can adjust if you need to as well. Once you have an elastic and it's not the end all be all, you can always start over if you want to. So now I'm just doing that twisting thing again. You know, it takes quite a few times, especially if you have older elastics, because elastics can be reused as long as they're not broken. And I'm just pulling that top of the braid up to make it looser. A little tip I'd like to add is that as I'm braiding, I like to keep my own little routine. So my personal routine is wetting the mane, sectioning off the hair with a pulling comb, adding a little quick braid, and then sectioning into my 3 parts and braiding down the braid. So this is a good tip for me because it allows me to make sure that each section is really uniform and that I'm just following the same routine. Also, muscle memory is a real thing, and if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's going to become a lot easier, you're going to get a lot faster at it, and it just quickens the whole process up overall. Now I'm going to speed up the video as I finish off these sections. I just want to mention that as you get towards the end of the mane, where maybe your blanket has made it a little bit thinner or it's just thinner in general, your braids might become a little bit smaller. Like you can see this end section here is a lot different than the other sections. I find that this is perfectly okay, and most horses' manes will have this, so it's not generally anything you should worry about too much. It does make it a little more difficult for me to braid, but you just keep working with it and doing it, and in the end it'll be perfectly fine, and it actually doesn't end up looking too weird or too noticeable, and it's just a little bit smaller than the rest of them. So at this point I finished braiding down each of my sections, and I'm ready to turn it into the knots that make this dressage knots. So I'm going to do that by putting an elastic on my finger and putting the butt of the braid to the base of the braid, right where I'm pointing. And essentially I'm going to fold it in half once, and then fold it in half again. And then you have your dressage knot, so I'm going to secure that in place with an elastic. And it's the same idea as before, where you might have to cross it over enough times to get it nice and tight and secure. And just make sure you do that, and then you have a dressage knot, and you're just going to continue this process all the way down. So I sped through a few of those, but I just wanted to slow down here because I felt like this was a good visual of me folding it in half and then folding it in half again. And then I just grab onto it really tightly and secure it in place with an elastic. So this is my completed look with all of my dressage knots in. I'm really happy with the way that this came out and how smooth it looked and how much I was able to learn about braiding in such a short amount of time. If I was doing this for a show, I would have used hairspray to make sure that they stay neat and tidy all day, but I wasn't doing that this time. So I hope you enjoyed watching and have a great day.